come in and do it.
I told him tonight, I said, I'm not trying to, don't take this wrong. Every place that opens up,
I'll take the car.
our systems
It's the
are
ones
good.
that you,
We're
it's
not
the
gonna
ones you
fail
don't
the
see that
state.
it orders.
Everybody fails the state.
Yeah, be on alert, especially in about a week.
Given their fault.
Yeah.
Call to order a meeting for the Normal Town Council for August 3rd, 2015. Please call the roll.
Mayor Kus?
Here?
Mr. Fritzen?
Here.
Mr. Preston?
Here.
Mr. McBride?
Here.
Ms. Lorenz? Here. Mr. McCarthy?
Here.
Ms. Gaines? Here.
We begin with a pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Before we begin with the omnibus agenda, we have had a request for public comment from Steve Thompson. And Mr. Thompson, if you're here, please come forward. I'm not sure the mic's, center one here, I think the microphone is on.
First of all, thanks for seeing me on short notice like this.
Before you begin, just as a formality, Mr. Thompson, we need your address for the record as well.
217 South Coolidge.
Thank you.
Normal.
Have a seat.
My understanding, you guys want to move the fire station from the west side of Normal. I think that is wrong. We had nothing on the west side. You're going to take the only thing we got away from us. The west side, of course, is Main Street. Since I've been here since '58. Now I don't understand why you want to move it. And I want to know why. Any answers?
This is for public comment, so say your piece. We'll discuss that in regular, when that agenda item comes up.
I mean, I didn't see any of you council people in the neighborhood asking our opinion about it. Never seen none of you, ever. Some of you been here for 20 years. It'd be nice, you guys come to the west side, talk to us. We don't get nothing. Streets not paved. I mean, why are we losing the only thing we got? That's all I want to know. And I'd like to have a real answer. And I thank you.
We now go to the omnibus agenda, items that are considered routine in nature and be handled as with one vote, unless a council member would like to pull an item for discussion. I would like to be excused on voting on any bills I may have incurred in my duties as mayor. Mr. Fritzen?
Second. Asked to be excused from voting on the BOPI invoices.
And we have a motion for approval and a second. Tonight, we're considering approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of July 20th, 2015, and approval of Town of Normal expenditures for payment as of July 29th, 2015. We are rejecting bids for the 2015 concrete pavement crack and joint sealing contract due to some wide disparity in bid amounts. We've authorized the execution of an intergovernmental agreement with the City of Bloomington, the County of McLean, and McLean County Soil and Water Conservation District, and that is for the administration and implementation of watershed management programs. We've authorized the execution of an intergovernmental agreement with Illinois State University, and that's pertaining to fire protection service for the university. We've authorized a pipeline crossing agreement with the Union Pacific Railroad for the replacement of a water main line at Railroad Milepost 123.98 near the Linden Street crossing. Please call the roll.
Mr. Fritzen?
Aye.
Mr. Preston?
Aye.
Preston? Mr. McBride?
Aye.
Ms. Lorenz? Aye. Mr. McCarthy?
Aye.
Ms. Gaines? Aye. Mayor Kus?
Aye. The item is approved. We have two items of general orders tonight. The first is an ordinance approving the execution of an intergovernmental agreement between the Town of Normal and Illinois State University for the exchange of property.
Move approval.
Second.
Is there discussion on this item? Mr. Peterson?
Didn't know if you wanted the chief to come forward and talk about the location. The question was raised. or-
Probably wouldn't hurt.
Okay. I guess, you know, the first thing that I would say is that we've been looking at this for a very long time. I think we first brought it to you in June of 2013, and obviously did quite a bit of work prior to that study session that we had with the council. I can tell you right up front, you know, we didn't look to see whether fire stations were on the west side of town or the east side of town or north side of town or south side of town. What we looked at was real run data, you know, where the calls are at, and the GIS locations. So we basically had 3 pieces of property that we were interested in, which they all ended up being university property. And we went to the university and we were working with them on those locations. And then once we kind of settled on one that we thought that was going to work for us, then we ran all the GIS data and the real-time fire reports to see where that got us in the community from that area. And so, you know, when we look at it, it brought us a little bit south of where we're at, and that's what we brought the Illinois fire chiefs in here a couple of years ago, and that was one of the suggestions, you know, fire station east of Veterans Parkway and something more centrally located in campus, probably a little south of where we currently are. You know, we have good access going to the west down Hovey Avenue, College Avenue. Those are main thoroughfares or roads, you know, which we can get road speed, you know, up to about 40 miles an hour with a piece of fire apparatus on those streets where, you know, Gregory is in a residential area where there's kids and, you know, different things like that. So, you know, all the response time data was GIS driven. It was real response time driven. And then we actually drove it. Assistant Chief Barnett actually drove multiple calls from different locations and actually just used regular road speed, no red lights, no siren or whatever. And we fell into the response time that we wanted between 4.5 and 6 minutes on all of those calls out of that location to get us to that area. You know, the one thing that we also kind of talked about, you know, back in 2013, that this is a 3 fire station plan and that things are going to have to move and shift and rotate to cover the community to get a response plan that covers almost everything with 4.5 to 6 minutes. Now we have places that it's 9 minutes, 9.5 minutes to get to, you know, to normal community. And so that was some of the thinking on changing and shifting the fire station locations.
So Chief, just let me add, based upon our conversations, the new location we're talking about for number 2 will actually improve overall west side response times, meaning lower response times to the west side in general, knowing that's a large area of town.
Right.
So we're actually improving our level of response from EMS and fire to the west side overall.
Right.
And we're dramatically improving response time in the campus area. And Station 2 is the primary responding station to the campus area, most of the campus area. So we will have dramatically improved response time to the campus area, which incidentally generates the highest call volume of any part of our community, understandably given the density. But it also achieves better response times overall on the west side of Normal. So it's kind of a win-win in that regard. And it is going to be a very active station, because particularly given its location near campus. So it is designed in such a way that we will eventually add a second EMS unit there. So we'll run 2 ambulances eventually out of that location, which again will further, I think, enhance the overall protection we're offering to the west side of Normal.
The other thing to take into consideration that, you know, we kind of talked about that evening is that, you know, fire stations are stationary and they're brick and mortar and everything, and the council went ahead and approved the automatic vehicle locators and all that equipment, which has now been installed and has been up and running, you know, for a month or two or whatever like that, that our units are constantly in flux. They're on their way to the hospital, they're on their way back from the hospital, they're on their way to training or whatever. Bricks and mortar fire stations are great to say, yes, it sits exactly right here and this is where it is, but those units are not there that often. They're very busy moving in and around the community. And so that's why we've gone to the closest unit mentality to bring those units where they need to be when the call comes in.
Great. Ms. Gaines and then Ms. Lawrence.
So just to kind of clarify,
Sure.
the station that's at Gregory Street, getting to the west side and let's just say over to the middle of Cottage
Okay.
from Gregory Street versus from this site, would the response times be similar? Would the old site be faster? Would the new site be faster?
You know, I think, you know, to answer your question, for example, Station 2 is right across the street from the nursing home. The response time at the nursing home today is probably 1 minute. You know, I mean, from the time the guys get the call and they drive out the door and go across the street. Is that response time still going to be a minute from, you know, the Main Street location? The answer is no. But is it going to fall within that 4.5 to 6 minutes? Yes, it's going to. And so what we're trying to do is build a plan for the entire community, not for just one or two specific locations. To answer your question, I don't know exactly, but I'm sure it's within seconds or a minute to that location. For example, I probably live on the farthest west street that is residential on the west side. And Assistant Chief Barnett drove from that location to my house in 5 minutes and 37 seconds without red lights and sirens. Just driving down the normal way down Hovey Avenue and turning onto Parkside, turning onto Whittemere, and 3 blocks you're at my house. Those are the kind of things that we did, you know, when we looked at this situation.
Ms. Lawrence?
Chief, are you at all concerned about, or can you speak to the congested traffic that sometimes can be at different times of the day on Main Street?
Sure. We looked at that. Obviously, we were concerned about that. You know, one of the first things we thought about was different signaling and different things like that. Through our engineering department and through the architect, they've worked with consultants and engineers throughout this process and everything. And they're suggesting to us that the normal flow of traffic at that intersection, because we thought, you know, everything should turn red, we should come out or whatever, but they're suggesting the normal flow of traffic from down by McDonald's basically to flow past there, for us to hit an emergency button and have it's not a stoplight or anything like that, but it's emergency flashers. You see them out in front of fire stations all the time. That they felt that if we stopped the traffic there, that by the time the light signaled and changed, that everything would be moving and flowing. As long as traffic is moving and flowing, we're in good shape. When it's stopped is when we're in trouble.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. We do have good access off of Dale Street to be able to go right, to go down to University. So to bring us to the Uptown, you know, to Bone Student Center, a lot of other places which we call hotspots. The Uptown Station is actually a hotspot because there's a lot of medical calls that come in, people coming in on trains or things like that. I think last year we had maybe 25, 26 calls at this location. So we're here quite a bit for different reasons and things like that. And so the hotspots are different places in the community that we looked at. They're nursing homes, they're assisted living areas, things like that. You know, I know the council, when Mercy Creek was built out there, had a conversation with them saying, we can't get to you in 6 minutes from where we're at or anything like that. But we also told them that whenever we have the opportunity, we'll try to make that response time better. And that's what we're trying to do as a part of this total package that we're doing on the relocation of the stations.
Mr. Fritzen?
Yeah, I think, to respond to our public speaker tonight a bit, this is the culmination of, like you said, Chief, of a long-time study. And seems like when you're going to take the final action, you get a lot more attention than when you have a work session or discussion about a report that's presented for consideration. And so I think that's an important thing to remember, is that this is something that's been ongoing for 2 to 3 years. I think it's been longer than that 2 to 3 year period that we've been hearing about the disrepair of Station Number 2. It's a 40-year-old building. That's not old as some buildings, in the age, but a fire station and the types of activities that go on there, and the apparatus and the advances really in apparatus and in protocols, I think demand that we have to move on from that location, and the cost to upgrade that station or put it back into better working order is just, it doesn't make sense to invest in that location. And as you said earlier, it's calls for service that really determine the position of a public facility such as this. It's not east, west, north, south. We do understand that east of Veterans Parkway is a concern and has been a concern. North of the interstate used to be a concern too, and Station Number 3 helped address some of that. But we've learned too that maybe moving that will actually, again, be better. So Station 3, and that's the farthest one down the line in this plan, will move most likely to the west some degree too. So the northwest portion of the community will possibly be served best out of the final location for Station 3. So this is a long-term plan, moving Station 2 and making it the new headquarters station, and it will become Station Number 1, and then eventually moving what's currently our headquarters in Station Number 1 to address some of those concerns on the east side, and Station 3 to really help supplement the west side and better serve the north side. So I think it's, you draw circles on maps as opposed to lines when you're talking about service such as this. I think too, though, on just addressing the west side of Normal, when there's been an opportunity to do something public, the town has done that. Maxwell Park, is one of the largest parks in town, and quite a few different options within that park, and of course Champion Fields and the dog park and the horseshoe pits and whatever. I mean, those are improvements to the west side of Normal that were available to us on the space that was available to us, and I don't believe the west side's been ignored. We're all elected at large. We're not divided into wards, and so each of us has a responsibility to respond to needs that are brought to our attention from all parts of town, and we all campaign on that, and include addresses in all parts of town in our mailings, and homes in all parts of town where we put yard signs and the like when we're running for elections. So I feel like where we've had the opportunity to address needs on the west side, and even to put some of public facilities and improve public facilities on the west side, we have. As you said, the location of a fire station doesn't generate commerce. It doesn't create any kind of a business advantage or anything like that on one side of town or another. And with the GIS and the tracking that we have available to us now, our emergency vehicles are going to move from location to location, not necessarily station to location. And I think that's a huge benefit for our community, and it does enable us to do what we're doing here without adding a fourth station, because that was another thing that was considered, is do we build a fourth station somewhere and leave the others where they are? And that may seem to make sense from a capital standpoint, but when you start talking about manning another station, the personnel costs are huge, and that's the biggest piece of the pie in the town's expense budget is personnel. And so we have to make as efficient use of personnel as we can. I think this is the first step in accomplishing that with the fire service.
Thank you. Further on the item? Please call the roll.
Mr. Preston?
Aye.
Mr. McBride?
Aye.
Mrs. Lorenz?
Aye.
Mr. McCarthy?
Aye.
Ms. Gaines?
Aye.
Mr. Fritzen?
Aye.
Mayor Kus?
Aye. The ordinance is approved. Item 7 is a resolution authorizing the execution of a purchase agreement for the property located at 1217 South Adelaide Street in the amount of $364,000 and an approval of a budget adjustment in the amount of $379,000.
Move approval.
Second?
Discussion on this item. Mr. Preston.
Just one quick question for staff. I notice in the contract here that we are utilizing the same, our broker is also the selling broker. Is this a broker that we've had a relationship with in the past, and it just happens to be they're also the one selling it and on both sides of the transaction, or is there any specific reason for that?
Well, that's the listing broker, the listing agent. We just went through the listing agent. We didn't hire a person on our end. So, yeah, but we certainly have a lot of experience with this particular broker.
Okay.
We do, yes, thank you. All good, too.
Further? Please call the roll.
Mr. McBride?
Aye.
Mrs. Lorenz?
Aye.
Mr. McCarthy?
Aye.
Ms. Gaines?
Aye.
Mr. Fritzen?
Aye.
Mr. Preston?
Aye.
Mayor Kus?
Aye. That resolution is approved. We have one item of new business, which is a presentation on the comprehensive plan, scope, and proposal by McLean County Regional Planning Commission. Basu, come forward and have at.
Basu is hardly going to get to take a breath from the Bloomington process, which is just now wrapping up, I think, and she's going to plunge right into the normal comp plan update. So, and I see she's got members of her staff here in support, so it's all yours.
Thank you. Respected Mayor and Council and Mr. Manager, thank you very much for the opportunity here to present this information. You should have all received a scope of work proposal, but for the benefit of the audience here, I am going to take a minute or two to explain what a comprehensive plan is and why we are doing this. According to Illinois Municipal Code, municipalities are allowed to create or authorized to create comprehensive plans. Excuse me, and once adopted, these comprehensive plans become the official development code for the communities. Comprehensive plan itself is not a regulatory document, it is an advisory guide. This is typically adopted with tools such as zoning ordinance and subdivision ordinances. The town's last comprehensive plan was updated in 2006, which was an update of the previous update in 1996. So since then, much has changed socially, demographically, economically. So now we are at crossroads in our community, and Regional Planning Commission, as a long-range planning agency for Bloomington, Normal, and McLean County, is very excited to conduct this planning process in partnership with the town staff. Without further ado, I will go ahead and get my presentation started. This process will be conducted in 3 phases over the next 2 years time frame. Phase 1 will be existing conditions analysis. This will be used to establish a baseline of where we are today. It'll be about 6 months, and I'll explain more about each one of these phases more in depth. The second phase, which is the community outreach and visioning phase, will be about a year. As you can see, it overlaps with the existing conditions phase quite a bit, and it is also a very critical phase. As we are trying to plan for 20 years into the future, we absolutely want to know what the community wants. We should also be able to envision all the possible scenarios for the next 20-some years. And the third phase, which is the strategic planning phase, is going to be the technical aspects of how we can make that vision come true. There'll be 3 types of committees for the oversight of this project. The first of which is the steering committee, which is going to be the administrative oversight for the process. This committee will be made up of city manager and department heads. They'll be meeting once a month, and Regional Planning Commission will be providing them status update on a monthly basis and receiving feedback from the group. The second committee will be a mayor-appointed vision committee. This will replace what town has historically been doing with the visioning committee, starting with the 1990 vision committee. And once again, when we get to the phase 2 part of it, I'll explain more. The third will be working groups. These will be the groups that will be formed during the phase 3 of the process to conduct some of the technical work. It will be a combination of city staff, professionals, and subject matter experts in various fields of the subjects we are trying to address, as well as citizens who are interested in those subject areas. So the first of the phases, which is absolutely critical to know where we are today, to conduct this planning process. It'll be done in 2 parts. Part 1 will be data gathering and analysis. We'll be gathering any and every data that we can get our hands on. That includes local data from university, from the town, and the county. It includes state-level data, such as birth and death statistics and other data that we'll be using for population projections, and national-level data sources such as Census, Bureau of Labor Statistics, IRS, USPS, and Housing and Urban Development Authority. What we are trying to do here is not provide you with a bunch of numbers. We all can access these databases. What you can expect to see from these analysis is more of a, are we finding any trends? Is there a change in where we have been with whether it's social, demographic, economic? We want to start to identify trends, particularly spatial trends within the community. The second part of this existing conditions analysis is review of existing plans. The town has a fantastic history of creating good plans and following through with the plans with the implementation. The 2015 report, the Uptown Redevelopment Plan, and the Bicycle Master Plan are just the few 3 examples I can think off the top. We want to make sure that we review plans, both old and new. New plans, because we do not want to duplicate any efforts. If it is already said in a plan, we want to make sure that we effectively integrate that. We also want to look at plans that have been created a while back. For example, the 2015 report. The strategies that were proposed in those reports, what worked and what didn't work, and why. We want to ask those questions. We also want to look at plans that are created specifically for subject areas. For example, the Parks Master Plan that was just created. Once again, when we look at subject-specific areas, and when we zoom out and look at across the subject areas, the outcomes may be slightly different. We want to make sure that we don't miss anything there. As part of this process, we'll also be looking at regional plans and other plans that were created by other agencies that would affect the quality of life and place here in Normal. In the light of new economic news, I've taken the recent regional economic strategy as an example. That strategy has identified 5 specific sectors as target sectors for Bloomington, Normal, McLean County. And the list is here. Without really going into the details, each one of these sectors have specific needs. Those include land use needs, resource needs, and much, much more when it comes to targets like entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship is a culture. It's not a sector. And from a planning perspective, there are many, many things that are needed to create a culture of entrepreneurship. We'll be looking at what is it that we can do from a planning perspective. What is it that other communities that are successful with entrepreneurship are doing? One of the things when it comes to innovative land use planning, there is a huge rise in what's called innovation districts. These are districts of mixed use, high density, access to transit, and most importantly, access to caffeine. So we'll make sure that we have those here. When we look at target sectors such as transportation and logistics, the land use needs for this particular sector are huge. We want to absolutely examine the costs and benefits of attracting a sector like this, especially given that our farmland is one of the most valuable farmland in the country. We also want to look at agribusiness. The resource needs, such as water needs, are huge for a sector like that. We are going to examine what it would take to bring in each one of these sectors and integrate that with the planning process here. So, end of this phase, there will be an existing conditions report, which will have more questions than answers. So this report will start, this is an opportunity for us as a community to think about a lot of these questions as we move forward with the following phases. So the second part is the community visioning. Once again, this will be conducted in two parts. The part one, which is community outreach, will be kicked off in September. The goal for this is to ensure that we reach out to the broad representation of our community. In the past, planning has been, the practice has been we create a report and we ask the community to comment on the report. That's one way of outreach, but we want to take the other approach, which has been extremely successful during our planning process in Bloomington. We want to go where the community congregates, whether it's neighborhood meetings, whether it is Rotary clubs, Kiwanis clubs, wherever it is. We want to reach out to the people where they are. And the tools and techniques that work for one group may not work for the other group. For some groups, it is traditional methods. For other groups, it's electronic methods, and a variety of these. In Bloomington, we found out that Facebook has been one of the most successful outreach tools for us. It may be similar here, but may be different. With a lot of college students here, it may be Instagram or Twitter or something else. But my point is, one tool does not work for every community or every demographic group. We will be using a variety of tools and techniques to not only engage the broad segments of the community, but also create enthusiasm and educate the community on why is it important for them to participate in this process. Most importantly, we want to capture the hopes and dreams for the future. We want to also, in this process, gain their support for implementation. Ultimately, we want this plan not to be sitting on shelf, but actually to be implemented. So this will be about 6 months, starting September through February. The second half of this is where we want to integrate the comprehensive planning with the town's history of creating a vision and updating that vision every 5 years. So 2015 technically should have been the 2040 Vision Committee or the 2040 Report Committee. We worked with city staff to make sure that these two work together. This group, the inputs for this group will be existing conditions report with a lot of questions and also the hopes and dreams of the community. What we hope to achieve here is we want a policy level direction from this group that will be appointed by the mayor. We want to be able to identify the critical imperatives. What is it that we absolutely must address? The policy level. We do not expect this group to identify actions or provide every solution, but really to identify the critical aspects that absolutely need to be addressed. What we also want to do is so when we use our statistical tools, our mathematical tools, we can do forecasting. We can do this based on a model. We can plug in numbers, and the model spits out numbers. We do that with population projections. We do that with employment projections. What that does not take into account is all the possible scenarios. We want this group to really, in a facilitated discussion, identify all the possible alternatives in the next 20 years. And as you can imagine, there could be many of those. We also want to be able to identify a future that we want to achieve. There could be many potential scenarios, but we want to be able to identify a scenario that we are working towards. And we want to make sure that we are not basing it off of nothing. We want to validate that as a possible scenario based on what we know today. At the end of this process, there will be a 2040 vision report, which will then become the basis for the entire planning that will be conducted over the next year. Based on the critical imperatives that are identified during the visioning process, the working groups or the technical groups will be formed. These groups, again, will be a combination of staff and subject matter experts and interested citizens. As of today, we don't know what those groups will be. It'll be a dynamic process. Some of those subject matters may be subjects that we have never addressed in planning before, and we'll figure it out as we go. But what's most important is the cookie cutter approach of what should be addressed in planning. It's housing, it's transportation, it's environment. I think we, as a community, are at a different point in time where we need to really address the community need, not so much what we think is the community need. Yet another important aspect I want to point out, and I really want to thank the town staff for making it clear that regional cooperation should be an absolute big part of this process. We are going to try and incorporate, and as a regional agency, we are thrilled to hear that, and we'd love to incorporate as many aspects as possible, but given the timeline, we may not be able to achieve all of those. The timing is, however, perfect on a few of these. Transportation, for example, the long-range transportation plan is supposed to be updated now. So we are going to absolutely make sure that becomes part of the town's comprehensive plan, but yet it is going to be the entire MPO. Health is another aspect. There are some major changes going on in our community, all good. From a countywide health plan, in the past, there used to be 3 different health plans. One that was made by the health department, one by Advocate, one by OSF. This year is the first year where all 3 agencies are coming together to create a unified health plan. I cannot tell you what a milestone that is. And one of the major factors in that process is, from a health perspective, planning, land use planning and development play a huge role. And we want to make sure that as part of the Normal's comprehensive plan, we integrate the planning policies into the health and make that a regional health plan for all of us to work towards. Economic development, as you're all well aware, there is a regional economic development strategy. Once again, the timing is right. The study is about to be concluded. There will be a presentation on regional strategy August 25th. We will have the luxury of those results. So moving forward, we are going to try and analyze what that means from a planning perspective, land use needs, resource needs, and integrate as much of that into the plan. Environmental, we want to start looking at regional watershed planning, not just specific impaired waters. Last but not the least, demographics of our community are changing rapidly. We have aging community, we have millennials, the housing needs of this community. There is an increasing body of literature that is stating that the housing demands are different today. It would be short-sighted of us to create a housing plan for Normal, housing plan for Bloomington, and one for the county. We really want to do a regional housing element. As of today, we do not have, we don't know where the resources are going to come from, but we will absolutely continue to pursue that and try to integrate a regional housing element as well. Last but not the least, comprehensive planning, when it first began in early 19th century, started addressing health issues around sanitary issues and things like that. Later on, the focus has shifted onto urban design, and subsequently it was on environmental. Today, it is much more complex. Today, it is social, economic, it is making sure that all of these processes are related, linked, economic resiliency. There is a lot of things we are trying to address in a comprehensive plan. It is not easy, but comprehensive planning is the perfect time to do, to link all these various subject matters. So that is what we will strive to do with the comprehensive plan. What can town expect? Absolutely a process that's inclusive. and transparent. We'll try to have as many demographic groups representative of the town included in this process, and a plan that's truly reflective of community's vision. And we don't want a comprehensive plan or any other plan sitting on the shelf. So you will see quite a bit of focus on implementation. We want a pragmatic plan that can be implemented. And absolutely integrating across the subject areas, across agencies, and across municipal boundaries. With that, I'll take any questions you might have.
Questions from the council? Mr.
Not
Fritzen?
a question necessarily, but just Vasu referred to this, and on page 8-9, it talks about regionalism, and I think we've all heard the comments that, why should we have multiple comprehensive plans? Well, you need to have a comprehensive plan for your community, but I appreciate the fact that in this process, the idea of reaching out, incorporating others, trying to have some regionalism where it makes sense. And obviously, we all know it does make sense. And I think that's important to emphasize because we've heard the criticism from the other side, but I think in this process here, it looks like where things can be pulled together, they will be. And I think that's a great goal to have.
Absolutely. And I would like to thank town staff for being absolutely open to that and pushing us towards that.
Mr. McCarthy?
Thank you. Mostly comment, no real question for you, Vasu. I'd like to echo Mr. Fritzen's comment first and foremost that a lot of citizen input and planning time and dollars have gone into these other plans, so I was really happy to read that that's going to be a prime focus. Also, having gone through one of these and been on the community-wide sustainability task force myself, I saw from the inside how valuable it was to have a diversity of citizen input at various levels of town involvement and citizen involvement. So I'm happy to see that that's part of a large effort to go out and get citizen input and various levels of participation from all of us, really. So that's really valuable. A couple of points near and dear to my heart, I'll just say that I'm biased about them. Having been part of the community-wide sustainability task force, I was wherever your last slide was, that you're parading a sustainability quote at the top, and that I hope as whatever the recommendations are, they're in line with that type of an approach that they take, not only just the watershed quality, but if there's built implications to the recommendations. I don't know what the scope of the recommendations are going to be at this point, but that we're looking in those ways to kind of keep the integrity of our vision in those ways. Also specifically that there's a wide variety of student population included in the plan. I think it's easy sometimes to miss that. And we talk about that, but sometimes that seems to get missed in the process, and I think that's a really important point, not just university, but all of them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Gaines, did you have anything? No. Further?
Just a comment. I think I made a comment as Vasu was walking up that she's starting our planning process here in Normal on the heels of completing Bloomington's, and I think it's just worth saying that this is a monumental process, and I can't tell you how much credit I give to a very small planning staff, regional planning, for tackling two comprehensive planning processes back to back. Some might say it's not very smart, but I think it's it's a very aggressive staff, and I know that this last couple of years with Bloomington has been a huge effort, and it's just a team effort, but it's an enormous task, and you can kind of get a sense for everything that's involved. I mean, town staff will be there to supplement, but regional planning will be carrying the load, and it is a monumental task, and it's quite remarkable, I think, for small staff like this to take on these kinds of projects, which if we went out to hire, and there are lots of planning firms that'll come do this, it would be hundreds of thousands of dollars of work that we get as part of our annual contract for planning services through regional planning. And from what I've seen of the Bloomington plan, it is really good, really a first-rate plan. So we expect that to be the baseline. And I really have every expectation that this is going to be a really sensational plan, like award-winning. I really feel that I think that, you know, the team has learned a lot going through Bloomington plan. They've got some, they'll be bringing, I think, some of the best components from that plan to ours, but also some new ideas and some things that after the fact, they probably said, well, we might try it differently next time. So I think we actually benefit a little bit by going second. That's not to slight Bloomington, because their plan is really good from what I've seen, first rate, and the process was very good. It just, given the lack of controversy, I mean, it seems to be uniformly endorsed and accepted, which is pretty amazing in any community. So I just want to say thank you in advance to Vasu and her staff. I know they're going to be working very, very hard the next couple of years, as will Mercy and members of our staff. But I just want to acknowledge what a feat it is to tackle two of these back-to-back with what is a very small staff. They're very small. They're scrappy, but they're small. And so thank you for taking this on.
Mr. Peterson, thank you very much for all those kind words, and I also want to echo his comments on Regional Planning Commission staff who worked really hard on Bloomington. One of the absolute advantages that we have coming into Normal's plan is we know that you take planning very seriously. We also know that the plans that are made here will be implemented. So that's absolutely encouraging for us as a planning agency to know that this the efforts that will be put forth will actually be executed. So we are very excited to get this journey started. Thank you.
And I think we are as well, Vasu. I'm already starting to populate our committees for the visioning report. Lots of enthusiastic people who want to join in, and so
Awesome.
they're ready to go.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Before going to adjournment, are there comments or concerns? Ms. Lawrence?
I just want to, well, first of all, say that it's good to be back. I was gone last meeting due to some travel plans, and there's really no place like home and no place like normal, so good to be back. The other thing, while I was away, I got caught up on some reading, want to draw attention to a July issue of the Illinois Municipal Review on sports tourism, the fastest growing segment of the travel industry. Might be a good read, just a front and back, page 9 and 10. If you haven't read it, I'd encourage you to do so. I'd be glad to share my copy with you.
Great. Mr.
I
Peterson?
have one item I was told to remind you of. The 14th of August is the off-campus welcome back student activity. Some of you indicated an interest in participating. It's going to run from 12:45 to 3 o'clock. We'll be getting out details for those of you that are available and would like to participate. I know that the university would appreciate that, and we will get you details as to where you need to be at 12:45 on August 14th, but I want to make sure that was on your calendars.
Great.
Thank you.
And I have one item of business that's going to require me to be here.
You want this, or? Yeah, sure.
Something's going on.
Cameras are queuing up.
I know.
Here you go. So Derek, is your hand warmed up because you're up? Mary Ann, come forward here.
Of course she does.
There we go.
You have to do this. It's all part of the grieving process. We have a proclamation for you tonight. And we'll let them get some pictures.
We got an audience out there.
You, and I will read this proclamation. Whereas Marianne Ford began work as a news reporter at the Pantagraph in Bloomington, Illinois on August 25th, 1975.
I was 2.
And whereas during her long and illustrious career in print journalism, Marianne Ford covered virtually all aspects of news in the Normal Bloomington area, including major breaking news events, local festivals, in-depth investigative stories, lengthy court proceedings, and countless human interest feature stories. And whereas Marianne Ford was assigned to cover the town of Normal in 1997, which has caused her to attend literally hundreds of public meetings involving thousands of late night and weekend hours during the past 18 years, every hour which you enjoyed, I know.
Absolutely.
And whereas Marianne Ford is known to all in the community, and particularly to her peers in the local media, as an outstanding journalist who embodied the highest ideals of responsible, ethical, and thorough news reporting, and whose personal goal was to always present the news in a manner that was unbiased, interesting, and accurate. And whereas despite being an aggressive news reporter with a reputation for asking hard questions of local leaders, Marianne Ford is also well known for her fairness, her ethics, and her congenial personality that endeared her to most everyone that she encountered in her role with the Pantagraph. And whereas during Marianne Ford's outstanding 40-year career, her journalistic talent and professionalism has been recognized by other organizations such as the Illinois Interagency Nutrition Council, which bestowed on Marianne a special award for the Pantagraph initiative called Fit Kids, which was dedicated to identifying and highlighting a common sense approach to preventing childhood obesity and developing healthier lifestyles for children and their parents. And whereas Marianne Ford has decided to retire from the Pantagraph after an illustrious 40-year career in which she informed, entertained, and enriched the lives of thousands upon thousands of Central Illinois residents through her outstanding work as a news reporter and journalist. And whereas Marianne Ford will be deeply missed by her good friends at the town of Normal, with whom she interacted almost daily over the past 18 years, and who hope and pray that Marianne Ford will continue to share with them her renowned talent for baking the best Christmas cookies and the best fudge in all of McLean County, which she so generously delivered to town employees at Christmas time for many, many years. Now therefore, I, Chris Coos, President of the Board of Trustees in the town of Normal, do hereby proclaim August 7th, 2015 as Marianne Ford Appreciation Day in the town of Normal, and that all residents, the town staff, the town of Normal, and elected officials send their collective best wishes to Marianne Ford for a long, healthy, and happy retirement, and that we extend to her our heartfelt appreciation for 40 years of outstanding service to the community, to Central Illinois, as an exemplary news reporter, journalist, and most importantly, our very good friend. So congratulations. A motion for adjournment, please.
So moved.
Do we have a second? Second. Please call the roll.
Ms. Lorenz?
Aye.
Mr. McCarthy?
Aye.
Ms. Gaines?
Aye.
Mr. Fritzen?
Aye.
Mr. Preston?
Aye.
Mr. McBride?
Aye.
Mayor Coops?
Aye, we are adjourned.
Oh, good. Excellent. Absolutely great. And I'll get a hold of her. We'll put that on the next agenda. Yeah.
A friend of mine is involved in St. Boys Ranch up in Flanagan.
Yeah.
And one of the things they started doing, both as a project for the boys, but also as a fundraiser, was bee hives. He's the guy I asked you about. He lives in Normal, and I asked you about him putting one in his yard, which he is not pursued because he knows people have this phobia, and so some kid in the neighborhood gets stung, it's going to be one of the bees,
Right.
all this stuff. But So he had an idea, and he knows the people at Pod over here, and he talked to them about putting that on the roof of the pod.